I started playing guitar when I was 14 years old, and towards the end of the 90s, one of the big things was a lot of guys kind of started falling into a rut where they all started sounding the same, or they were using very specific things. If they weren't using Ibanez 7-string guitars, they were using either Gibson Les Pauls or PRS single-cut guitars. And everybody and their brother was using a Mesa Boogie dual rectifier or a triple rectifier, which there's nothing wrong with those amps. It's just everybody sounded the fucking same. Whether it was radio rock, heavy metal, groove metal, whatever, you know. And you had some outliers, obviously, like Dimebag, you know, Randall and all that stuff. But I very quickly came to have a love for Paul Reed Smith guitars. I just could never afford one. And they seemed very unattainable to me back then, as most of the guitars that I really loved as a teenager did. But as I got older and was making better money than I was as a teenager, I was able to buy better guitars. Sadly, it wasn't until my 30s that I finally was able to get stuff like Fenders and higher-end guitars like that. Basically anything that was north of $300. But the PRS guitars still seemed sort of unattainable until I learned about the SE models, which admittedly I didn't know about right away because I just wasn't paying attention to the stuff that they had out because it seemed so expensive. But I started putting very serious thought into a 2021 SE 24. And I really liked the green one, the Ezra Verde or whatever it's called. I wasn't super crazy on the neck. It was awful bright for my liking. That's just the nature of maple necks that are not finished. But I happened to be in a guitar store in my area, and they had a Tremonti SE hanging on the wall. And they also had a couple of the new 2021 models, and I went back and forth. And I originally was just going to walk out without picking anything up. And the more I looked at the Tremonti, the more I was like, you know what, fuck it. It was used. It's a 2014 model, and the price was pretty good to start with. So I asked him, I was like, can you do any better on that? And the kid said, yeah, I can do 525. I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'll take it. So that's how we got to here. So let's go through some specs. Now, from what I can find, it looks like the original Tremonti SE Customs featured SE 245 humbuckers up until 2017. And it's got a 25.5 inch, no, it doesn't have a 25.5 inch scale length, that's just force of habit there. It has a 25 inch scale length. The tremolo bridge, it has a flamed maple veneer over a mahogany body, maple neck, rosewood fretboard, 22 frets. Some of the other colors that came in at the time that this was made was cherry sunburst, sapphire, tobacco sunburst, and vintage sunburst, which I think some of those colors are in the Made in America models now. The SE Custom currently only comes in this gray-black burst. The headstock also, up until I don't know when they changed it and actually put the Paul Reed Smith logo on it, this guitar has the Tremonti SE logo on the headstock, so you don't actually, it doesn't say anything about Paul Reed Smith and PRS until you look at the back of the headstock where the serial number is. But I don't necessarily care what's on the headstock. I just, superficial as it might be, I'll buy a guitar just because it looks cool, and this thing looks fucking cool. The color really shines in really bright light. You can kind of see everything that's going on. The faux binding looks really nice. It adds a nice little dimension to it instead of having your traditional binding. This is actually the first PRS guitar I've ever owned. It's only like the second one I've ever played. It feels pretty much what I imagine any single cut guitar feels like. It's pretty beefy as far as the weight. I don't know how much this particular guitar actually weighs. The neck feels very similar to the slim 60s neck on the Epiphone and Gibson Les Pauls. Might be a little thinner, but it's very comfortable. It's not bulky or anything like that. It has a 10-inch radius fretboard, which feels nice. I mean, I'm pretty much used to that. I play anywhere between a 9.5 and a 12-inch radius fretboard. The tuners, I'm not crazy on them. They work. Whoever owned this guitar didn't string it up really well, so that also is causing some issues, but it feels like there's a little bit of play in the tuner before the gears engage. So I'm probably going to swap those out for something else. I did look at maybe just trying to keep it all PRS. I'm not super stoked on the black speed knobs. I was thinking of maybe getting the lampshade knobs until I saw that they're $10 a piece, which is fucking outrageous, but I'm an idiot, and like I said, I'm kind of vain when it comes to appearances on a guitar, so if I really think something should have a particular look, I will spend the money, so I'll probably end up spending $40 on fucking knobs. The tuners, like I said, I don't like them. I'll probably switch them to hip shots, or if I can find a decent set of Grovers, I'll put those on, but yeah, these PRS tuners aren't staying. I don't know if they've gotten better over the years, but on this model, they're not hot. They work well enough, but again, like I said, I like 18:1 ratios, or at least smooth, and this just doesn't. I don't know, I can feel the play in it before it seems like it engages, and they're not super accurate at times. So those are probably going to go by the wayside. The pickups are serviceable enough that I'm not in a hurry to change them. I looked into the current Tremonti pickups for the American-made model, and then I quickly exited out of that window because to get the set, it's $340, and that's more than half of what I paid for the guitar. So I don't think that that's the route I'm going to go. But I don't want to put active pickups in it. PRSs, to me, when I think of a PRS guitar, and I'm sure this is different from most guitar players, I think of like Opeth, Mark Tremonti, and late 90s and early 2000s metal and rock, I guess. But I think of that passive sound. I don't necessarily want it for that high gain active pickup sound. I have plenty of other guitars for that sound. So I kind of want to stick to the passive route. Before it gets suggested in the comments below about Seymour Duncan pickups, the only Seymour Duncan passive pickup I've used that I like is the Invader, and I'm not putting those in there. I've tried the JB twice, and I've hated it in both guitars that I put it in. And the 59, I've used the 59. I didn't like it either, so probably going to skip those. I might just maybe keep an eye out for used Gibson pickups. I know that's kind of probably blasphemy, but something along those lines, like that PAF sound. Or maybe I'll just leave the pickups alone. Like I said, they sound good enough that I'm not in a hurry to change them, so maybe I just never will. But just other things like the cosmetics, I don't like the black speed knobs on here. And obviously, like I said about the tuners. Playing it feels great. I'm not a big tremolo guy, so I haven't really messed with it too much, but it feels smooth from what I've done with it. It stays in tune good enough for the 40,000 wraps that whoever owned this guitar before me put on the tuning pegs, so I imagine that when I actually string it up properly, it'll be better than it is. But as far as a non-locking tremolo system goes, I'm not crazy on the 6-bolt trems. I prefer the 2-bolt ones if I'm actually going to use it, but this is one of the smoother ones that I've used that have the 6 bolts screws. I was surprised to see that the trem block is pretty beefy. It's not the thinner, smaller pot metal trem block that you see on most of these imports. I don't know if this was changed or if that's the standard on these, so I can't say for sure. If somebody can correct me on that one, or let me know in the comments below if that's the standard, then that would be appreciated. So I'm not trying to play that off as fact that that's one way or another how the trem block's supposed to be. But all in all, this is a fucking amazing guitar. The fretwork, like I said, I mean, I don't know the full history of the guitar, but I mean, it doesn't seem like it's had any fretwork done to it. There's a little bit of wear, but nothing beyond the realm of reason. I would assume that this was probably parted with because they either needed money or they just never used it. That's generally why I get rid of guitars. Because it seemed like it's taken care of, but it just doesn't seem like it was played a lot. And I know stores clean up guitars when they get used ones in, but I mean, this thing has definitely been, whoever had it cared for it. They just might not have used it a lot. So, but I've been rambling on. Let's see how it sounds, and we'll come back. All in all, this is a well-made guitar. One of the best, if not the best, import models I've ever played. Now, granted, I know it was made in Korea at the World Music Factory, and Korean-made guitars generally have a reputation for being well-crafted instruments, and this lives up to that reputation. Every Korean import guitar I have has been amazing, but this is probably... this beats out those two Korean Epiphone Les Pauls that I have, and that's saying a lot because those are really nice instruments, but they do have some issues with... I never understood why the pickups were made the way they were on those instruments, but this one here, I really... if I was nitpicking, I would say that the switch feels a little wonky, but that's because it's different than the switches that are on every other guitar I've ever played with a 3-way toggle like that. It's just a little, like, it's kind of like the switch seems a little recessed. I don't know. It's just a little weird. And I mean, I guess if you really wanted to nitpick, you could say that, well, it doesn't say PRS on the headstock, it says Tremonti, but you know, that's, nobody actually gives a shit about what's on the headstock other than guitar players, so that doesn't bother me too much. But as far as sound and playability goes, this thing is amazing, and I'm glad that I went with my decision to purchase it, because had I known how good this was and I would have walked out of there and not got it, I probably would have been bummed out, because this thing is definitely worth every dollar that I paid for it, and probably then some. So this was quite a steal for me, I guess. And with that being said, I would like to thank Hubbard Music in Hubbard, Ohio for this awesome ass guitar, and I would like to thank you guys, the viewers, for taking the time to watch. And if you could rate, comment, and subscribe, let me know what I'm doing right, doing wrong. Just every little bit helps. So again, thanks for taking the time to watch, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.